G'day, America. It's Tony and Ryan from the Tony and Ryan podcast from Down Under.
This episode is sponsored by Boost Mobile, the newest 5G network in the country.
These guys are no longer the prepaid wireless company you might remember. They've invested billions into building their own 5G towers across America, transforming the carrier into America's fourth major network alongside the other big dogs.
Yep, they're challenging the competitors by working harder and smarter, like this amazing new network they've literally built. They have blazing fast 5G and plans for all the latest devices. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or find them online at boostmobile.com.
On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where Wisp comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. Wisp. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
Thumbtack presents the ins and outs of caring for your home. Out. Procrastination, putting it off, kicking the can down the road. In. Plans and guides that make it easy to get home projects done. Out. Carpet in the bathroom? Like why? In. Knowing what to do, when to do it, and who to hire. Start caring for your home with confidence. Download Thumbtack today.
Tough luck, longhand. But that's what you get for playing with your head up your ass. A couple more like that, we can all go to bed early. Name's Lonergan. Doyle Lonergan. You're gonna remember that, Mr. Shaw. You're gonna get yourself another game. You follow?
Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg, and I'm here with my right-hand woman, Vanessa Mendel.
In person. This is amazing.
It's so great to see you. So, Vanessa, I'm so excited about this week's episode because we're about to interview my stepdad about the first big movie he ever wrote, which was The Sting.
Which is amazing that he was part of that at all. It's incredible.
Oh my God.
Incredible
it's such
movie
a
history.
great story. Guys, he was like 26 years old. It was like the second movie that he had produced. He was straight out of college and really didn't know what he was doing. And so the story is so lovely because I remember hearing a little bit about this growing up, but I really had never heard the whole shebang.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited and he's a great storyteller too.
He's so good. I'm so excited. We've had him on the pod before, and I'm excited to listen to this next one.
He's a comeback kid. We got to we cannot forget to give those sweatshirts out. He's not a big hoodie person, but in any event, let's get going.
Let's do it.
Dad, your second pod. Now you're an old pro.
I'm old. I don't know if I'm a pro.
No, the Major League Pod, as you know, was like a huge hit. I think people love your story so much. I loved hearing about it. And I think I'm so excited to talk about The Sting because it was a narrative that happened before, I was born, but I had sort of heard the stories growing up at the dinner table. And so I realized in reviewing the movie, which is so great and feels like a real classical film, that I don't know the story. I don't know how it all started and how it all began and how you ended up writing it at such a young age. And so, David Ward, I want you to take us back to your very first memory of The Sting and how it all came together. And I want you to take us through that sort of time because I think if you recall, I think Mean Streets may have come out the same year that The Sting did, which is like so crazy. And those feel like two very different films.
They were within 4 or 5 months of each other. Definitely.
So wild. So wild.
Let's see. In film school, I had written my first film, a film called Steelyard Blues, that was made into a movie and just was a total disaster. Jane had a great cast: Jane Fonda, Donald Sutherland, Peter Boyle, but that's a whole nother story. The story of that movie.
We may have to do that one as like, our like sort of.
Yeah, you have to do that one as, the real, you don't know, they don't always go as you plan.
But Dad, I know like our loyal listeners are like, well, how did that even happen? How did you get your first script out of film school produced?
Well, there was a great deal of serendipity involved. I was living in Venice in a $75 a month apartment, a studio apartment. And cool. I was writing, this was a script that I began as a grad student at UCLA in my second year of grad school there. And across the street, there was a place called the Venice Skill Center, which is no longer there. It's unfortunate because it was kind of a vocational school where people learned to do auto mechanics, stenography, a bunch of different kinds of skills that used to be part of the culture.
Cool.
Stenography, not so much anymore, obviously. There's still auto mechanics, but even some of that has been replaced by some more modern technologies. But so I was writing this script and I was writing longhand because, as you know very well, I don't type.
Yes. Well, I just have to tell like our loyal listeners that my dad would, we'd walk into his office and he'd have these big yellow pads and he would write his scripts out longhand. And then at the very end, when he was meant to turn it in, he'd have someone come in and type it and he would read it to the typist. And that's how he turned in his scripts, which is so crazy. You just reminded me of that, which is so wild. Love that.
The lowest tech you could possibly be. And for me, finding a typist was a huge deal because my handwriting was not great at all. And so I had to find somebody who could actually read my handwriting well enough to type the script. But anyway, on this particular occasion, I finished writing it. And I happened one day to, just walking home from the market, I happened one day to run into the guy who ran the Venice Skill Center. I got to talking and I said I was writing a script. And he said, "Really, you're writing a script?" I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to find a typist." He said, "Well, I have a whole pool of stenographers, people who are learning how to type. Why don't you bring it over and we'll type it up for you? It would be good practice for them. And, it would save your shoes some walk." And so I took it over, and unfortunately what happened is that they divided it up among the stenographers. So some were typing some pages and some others. And even their typewriters, they had 2 or 3 different kinds of typewriters, and the fonts were slightly different each one. So when I got the script back, I was looking through it, and page 3 would be in one font, and page 7 would be in a slightly different one.
Oh my God, that's so good.
I had no idea it could be this complicated.
Oh my God.
So I finally took it back to him. I said, "Can we do it in just one font?" And he said, "Oh yeah, right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah." And then he told me a story as they were typing it up, and he said, "Do you have an agent?" And I said, "No, I don't really," because what I had done, I would go into casting calls because they used to have open casting, a thing called open casting calls where, it was a cattle call basically. Anybody who wanted to come in for the part could come in and talk to the producers. And so I did that, and I get in the room with the producer, and I said, "I'm not really an actor, but I got a script here that I really love you to read."
Would you really?
I did. Yes, I really did.
So did you meet a couple of producers that way?
I did. Haskell Wexler and
Stop.
Gosh, I think I met a sub-producer for Ray Stark, who was one of the biggest producers at the time. And I got kicked out of all the best offices in Hollywood.
Dad, I forgot how much gumption you had. You have a couple great stories like that.
I had, when you're young and stupid and you don't really know the business, you just feel like, okay, well, what have I got to lose? They're going to throw me out of their office. Don't even remember me. There's 50 other people in the waiting room. Why would they remember some kid who came in and tried to get them to read a script? So that wasn't working. I didn't get anywhere with that. And I happened to run into and this same guy at the Venice Skills Center said, well, I know an agent. I said, really? He said, yeah, my wife had a little fender bender with him. And, they got to talking, they started exchanging numbers for insurance companies, and we've gotten to be kind of good friends, So I'll tell you what, I'll give the script to this agent and see what happens. It's great. So he gave the script to the agent, and so I got this call back from Stu Miller saying, God, I read your script, Steelyard Blues. I really love it, and I'd like to get it to this young producer I know, Tony Bill. So I had never heard of Tony Bill. I had really never heard of any producers, really. I was like your average person. I watch a movie and the credits just go by.
Sure.
I didn't even know who the writers were most of the time. I usually knew who the directors were, but I had a meeting with Tony, and Tony's a great guy, and it's been a lifelong friend. Tony said, I really kind of like this script. And he got it to Donald Sutherland, and Donald liked it. And Donald at the time was in a relationship with Jane Fonda. And so it came together and they decided to do it. And unfortunately, the director, she brought in a director that she worked on for a show called Free the Army, which was an anti-Vietnam War kind of show. Then they made the movie, and it just really bombed. I was kind of, I didn't know quite what to do. I didn't know if I had a career, that was, or if I was just in movie jail for the rest of my life. I didn't know. So, but while I was writing Steelyard Blues, I did a scene that involved pickpockets. Not being a pickpocket, I had to research pickpockets. So I read a book about grifters. And grifters, there's a whole hierarchy of grifters. At the top are confidence men. At the bottom are, basically pickpockets, because they steal. So I read this book, and I just happened to see this chapter on confidence men, and I read it, and I thought, God, these people are really incredible. They don't steal. They don't use violence. They get people to give them their money because they're greedy. They sort of put on these little plays for them. They set up a situation where they say, you can make a lot of money by doing this, but it's illegal. So just know it's illegal. They even tell people it's illegal. So, and people, really greedy people go, well, I don't care. I can make a killing here. And so they basically, they were a criminal subculture, but they didn't do anything that most criminals do. I thought that was a fascinating group of people. I thought I'd never seen a movie about this.
Cool.
So I thought, I think I'll do a movie about these confidence men.
So, Dad, this was your original idea. No one came to you with a book or an idea. You were just like, this is a cool idea.
No. I had just read this, and it stayed in the back of my mind because I thought, I went and wrote the pickpocket scene for Steelyard Blues, and then after that bombed, Tony came to me and said, David, do you have any other ideas? We love your writing. We don't blame you for the failure of this movie. And I said, well, I got this idea kind of about confidence men. And I sort of told Tony what it was about. And he said, God, that sounds fascinating. I've never seen a movie about those people. And he said, you know what? He was in talks with Redford to do a movie about barnstorming, flying biplanes.
Okay.
And which was later made into The Great Waldo Pepper. He said, I'll take this to Redford and see, what you should do? You should do the pitch into a tape recorder, little portable tape recorder, and I'll take it to Redford and play it for him because I'm going up to see him in Sundance in a couple of weeks.
Oh my God.
I was like, okay. So I had this little tape recorder. It was literally this big. And, I practiced my little pitch and I talked into it. so he took it to Redford, and Redford said, God, these people are fascinating. When you have the script done, I want to read it first. I want you to bring it to me first. I did a first draft that took about 6 months, and I read it, and I thought, yeah, this is how a sting operation works, but I'd kind of like it to be a sting on the audience as well. I'd like them to be really fooled at points in a way that they could never say after watching the movie, oh, I never would have fallen for something like that. So I started all over again. And when I got the idea of the fake FBI guys, that was when I was really finally able to crack it. And that script drove me crazy because I would do one thing here and I'd realize, no, that if I do that, that's kind of a cheat. I have to keep it. I can't give people false clues that would not happen in real life. But I finally finished it after a year, and Tony took it to Redford, and Redford said, okay, I want to meet you at the Bel Air Hotel next week. And I'm like, oh my God. I go to the Bel Air Hotel, and I go up by the pool. I look around, and this guy stands up. The most handsome man I have ever seen in my life. I mean, a guy who, if you thought he looked good on screen, in person, he was even better.
Oh, God.
And I just thought, oh, my God. This guy, God gave this guy everything, and the rest of us are just scrambling around for the leftovers.
Oh, my God.
I was slightly intimidated.
Sure.
And Elmer said, hi. He said, hi, I'm Bob Redford. Like I didn't know. Like anybody else around there would have been Robert Redford.
Oh, my God. That's so great.
So we sat down and talked, and he really liked it. He said, but I had originally written it for someone slightly younger, so that the relationship between Newman and Redford was more almost father-son than mentor-student. And his note was, you need to make him a little older for it to work for me and Newman. I said, yeah. You and Newman?
Dad.
Is Newman in this?
So that was the first Newman? You were hearing that. Like he was just like, he'd already decided.
Yeah. Yeah, he said, because I'm going to send this to Paul to play Gondorf.
Oh, dude.
I said, you are? Great. Will I change it? Yes, I will. Let me think about it. Okay. So he sent it to Newman, and Newman was like, let me send it to George Hill first. Mm. So he sent it to George Hill, and George Hill was in. And I thought, oh my God, this is going really fast.
Dad, is this all in the course of a couple weeks? Like, is it like that?
This all came together in 2 weeks.
No.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
4 9. 4 jacks. You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Este es el mejor momento de ahorrar en Verizon, porque puedes llevarte hasta 4 teléfonos nuevos ahora en nuestros planes más bajos. Es muy fácil. Imagínate todo lo que vas a poder hacer con un teléfono nuevo. Dile chao a las fotos borrosas. Vas a poder tomarte unas selfies increíbles y vas a poder hablar con tus primos sin que se muera la batería después de 5 minutos. Este es tu momento de ahorrar. Visita tu tienda Verizon y llévate hasta 4 teléfonos 5G. Sí, 4 teléfonos, ahora en nuestros planes más bajos. Al intercambiar teléfonos de Apple, Samsung o Google en cualquier condición. Solo en Verizon.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text. The long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever.
On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where Wisp comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. Wisp. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
I don't even know you.
You know me. I'm just like you. It's 2 a.m. and I don't know nobody.
Then Redford and Hill went to talk to Newman about it. Because Newman, for some reason, was still, and this is a story that has been, there are a couple versions of, because there's one version where Newman went for it right away, and there was one where he said he wasn't doing it, walked into an elevator, closed the doors, and then opened the doors again and said, yeah, I'm doing it, which is a better story. But it feels like one of those apocryphal stories, you know, that maybe that wasn't quite how it went down, but
totally,
you know, knowing Newman, you know, he was very playful. He was very much a practical joker. So it was very much within his character to kind of pretend like he wasn't interested, and then he was. So then he came in, and then he sent it to Robert Shaw to play Lonergan, the villain.
Oh, cool.
And so this came together in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, the film had been shown to Danny Melnick at MGM. Daniel Melnick was the head of production at MGM at the time. And he heard about this casting, and he knew that they were going to take it to Universal, to Zanuck and Brown. Dick Zanuck and David Brown were very big producers at Universal. And so Daniel Melnick called me up, and me and my agent up, and said, look, if you do it here, I'll let you direct it.
To you, Dad?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my.
And I thought, okay, this sounds good, but if I direct it, Redford and Newman are out. They're not going to do it with me.
So smart,
They're
Dad.
going to do it with George Hill, but they're not going to do it with me.
Yes.
So in a way, if I say yes, I'm starting over again and to see what cast I can get. And at this point, coming off a failed movie that I didn't even direct, I haven't directed anything.
Sure.
This is a big ploy by MGM to try to get the film over there, and probably try to get Redford and Newman to come with Hill over there. So
right.
I kind of saw it just didn't add up.
Ugh.
So I said, no, we're going to go with Universal. So they went to Universal, and boom.
There you go.
Go movie.
Oh my God. So were you filming 6 months later? Like, is it that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, it was. Well, I remember it was about 3 or 4 months before we started pre-production, because I think Newman had something to finish. But then, then I got together and I spent all of pre-production with George Hill. And that was one of the biggest learning experiences I ever had in the movie business, because I always wanted to direct a movie someday. And just watching him prepare, he went over every single scene with me, every single line of dialogue. He would say, okay, David, why is Redford saying this here? And a lot of times I would think, well, I thought it was a pretty good line. And he'd say, yeah, but why is it a good line? Is it a good line just because it's funny, or because it's part of the character? How does this relate to his character? And it was a real object lesson to me, because he said to me, David, the one thing you can never allow to happen is have an actor ask you something about the character that you don't have an answer to, because then it opens a very wide door because that actor starts to think, I don't know if this director really has a complete vision of who this character is and how it fits in the story. And if an actor has that, then they start to try to save themselves rather than rely on you, because all actors feel is, I mean, it's not that they're insecure, but they're up there 30 feet high.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, everything that you've written comes through them, and they have to understand it. They have to feel it. They have to it has to be ingrained in them. And if the director doesn't know why they're doing something, then they're going to make it up themselves. And that may go all kinds of different ways.
So did you find that you were rewriting with him in that pre-production process?
Well, not very much, because he was like, his thing was, okay, it was less about changing things than it was about him understanding what I was thinking when I was writing it and what my intention in every scene was. There were a lot of things that happened in pre-production that were also quite educational. One, there was a day that Robert Shaw and Newman were rehearsing a scene, and they were rehearsing the train scene. And it's probably the scene people remember most in the movie, the poker game on the train scene. And Robert Shaw, being a stage actor, he's at performance level. You know, he fills the room. I mean, he's just boo. He's big. He's Robert Shaw. And Newman is kind of mumbling, and he's not matching the energy, and he's basically, Shaw's blowing him away. And I go over to George and I said, George, what's wrong with Newman? He's not getting the character. He doesn't seem to know what the hell he's doing. And George looked at me like I was the stupidest man on earth. He said, David, wait till we turn the camera on. And sure enough, the first day, as soon as the camera came on, boom, Paul Newman, full blast. He was just an actor who never got to performance level ever in a rehearsal, because he was a very psychological actor. And in fact, George Hill said, David, the one thing I don't want you to do is talk to Paul about the script, because he always wants to talk to the writer, and he's always looking for ideas that he can play with. And then he brings them to me and drives me crazy. Okay. Because he knows what he's going to do. He's just going through his process. He knows what he's going to do, but he just has to air everything out just to be. And I said, okay, but what if he comes up to talk to me and wants to talk to, how can I say to Paul Newman, I'm sorry, I don't want to, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about the script. Go away. I'm not talking to you about the script. I don't know how to do that. What happened was, every time Newman sort of was walking toward me, I'd duck behind I'd run around a corner or duck behind a dumpster. I mean, I was doing things to avoid him that were ludicrous.
Stop.
I mean, the only way I could deal with it was just to not have a conversation with Newman. So one day, George Roy Hill and Henry Bumstead are talking to each other. Henry Bumstead was the production designer, really one of the greats. And I was watching them talking, and all of a sudden these two arms came around me from the back, and I heard this voice say, "Gotcha." And I knew right away from the voice that it was Newman. And he said, "David, you've been avoiding me, haven't you?" And I said, "No, Paul, why would I avoid you? I'm nobody. You're Paul Newman. I have a wealth of things to learn from you. Why would I avoid you?" He said, "Because George told you to, didn't he?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I am so screwed now. I can't lie to Newman about it, but if I tell him if I rat George out, He said, don't worry, Dave, I got this. What we're going to do, you and I are going to we're just going to have a little discussion here. We can talk about anything, baseball, groceries, anything you want to talk about. I just want George to see us talking, okay?"
No way.
I said, Paul, I'm on dangerous ground here. Yeah. I'm out on the ice and it's cracking. And, Dave, don't worry. So we start talking, and George Hill glances over, and George Hill had the scariest evil eye of any human being I've ever met. And I got the full on, what the F are you doing? So he started to walk. He walks slowly over to us and says, so, what are you guys talking about? And Newman goes, we're talking about a bunch of shit. I mean, it just free-flowing conversation, bunch of shit. And George said, really? What kind of shit? Then Newman, in a stroke of incredible genius, started to list off 4 or 5 of the leading manure companies in America. I couldn't believe his mind worked like that, so that we, as if we were actually talking about shit. And even George Hill had to crack up, and because I thought Paul had completely thrown me under the bus, and George laughed, everybody laughed, and George was, okay, yeah, that's fine. You just keep talking about that.
So, Dad, were you on set the whole time?
I was there for a time, and then there was a writer's strike, and I couldn't cross the picket line to go to the set.
Oh.
But while I was there the first week of shooting, and the first week of shooting was the opening scene. But I didn't think he shot it I didn't think it worked all that well. It felt like, the first week of movies is sometimes not the strongest stuff. It takes a little while to...
Yeah, get your legs. Mm-hmm.
And I said to George, I don't think I think you can do better. I tried to figure out a way to say it without saying it, but he got the message clear and simple. He said, okay, Dave, you know what? I think you need not to come to the set for the next week.
Is that true?
Like, yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my God. That is hilarious.
What was interesting is he banned me from the set for a week, and then he went and reshot that whole opening because he thought so too. He didn't think they did it right, but he didn't want me to tell him that. He didn't want to hear that from punk rookie writer. So I was off the set for a week, and then I came back and I kept my mouth shut. And I really didn't have to say anything because he got it after that. But the big thing with George, the story of how the music came
tell me
to
that.
be. George was an incredibly interesting man. He was a bomber pilot in World War II.
Wow.
Expert pilot. Basically, when he was editing, he wore these flight suit overalls that pilots wear.
Oh my God.
He was a wealthy man. He came from a wealthy family, but he also made a lot of his own money. But he was one of the cheapest guys ever. He never picked up a check. He would wear things until the elbows were completely worn out before he would buy something new. He was just from that generation, that Depression era generation of there's no money that's going to cover what could happen. But anyway, he went to Yale. He graduated with a PhD in music. And his workout every morning was to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and play Bach on the piano. Every morning, 6 o'clock, Bach on the piano. This was his way to get ready for the day. Talk about a Renaissance man. I mean, unbelievable. And he used to come from New York to LA flying a biplane. It took him 5 days to get there. And he had farmers' cornfields that he knew, that he was friends with the farmers, that he would land in, stay overnight, take off the next day, go to the next one. Unremarkable. Who does this? Who does this anymore? Nobody. I don't know a living human being who's like this. So I had been listening to the Scott Joplin ragtime, his ragtime compositions played slowly by Joshua Rifkin, a record label called Nonsuch, which has also gone out of business since that time. And I love the music, and I thought that George would love to play it on the piano. So I went and did some sheet music for it, and I gave it to him, and I said, George, when you're playing, you might want to just try this, mix it in with a Bach or whatever, because I knew he played other things. That Bach was the staple, but he played other things. So he went and played it one morning. He came to me and said, David, this is the music for the Sting.
No way. So was that your plan all along, Dad? Was that your like?
No. As a matter of fact, I said to him, no, this is all wrong. George, you got it wrong. This music predates the Sting by about 30 years. Okay, it's not the music of the era, because in the script I had blues music from the era.
Oh.
You know, Bessie Smith, Big Bill Brunzi, all these kind of blues artists, very roots blues artists from the time. And I said, no, George, this isn't right for the movie. He said, Dave, no, this is the right music. This is it.
No way.
And I told him, it's like 30 years before. He said, David, you and 3 musicologists are going to know that. So did the movie. And when I first saw the movie with the music, I thought, God, was he right?
Oh, my God. It's iconic. It truly
so right,
is iconic.
And I was so wrong.
Oh, my God. He knew.
I'm glad he didn't listen to me. But,
yeah.
I can't, it's hard for me to even do justice to what an incredible human being he was.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. Wisp gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? Wisp is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
Your boss is quite a card player, Mr. Kelly. How does he do it?
He cheats.
So how did he command the set, Dad? Were people just like intimidated by this like tremendously strong Renaissance man, or was he?
Yeah, because he was so prepared and he knew exactly what he wanted. And the thing about George that was great is that unlike a lot of modern directors, he didn't feel the movie was about him or about the way he shot it. He said, when I asked him, I said, well, what determines how you shoot the movie? He said, I shoot it the best way to tell the story. I'm a storyteller. That's what I'm about. And he never went on talk shows, never did any promotion for any of his movies. Mm-hmm. He let the actors do that. George Hill would never, George Hill going on a talk show, and no, he would never do like that. He was just from that generation of people, grew up from the Depression, grew up in, served in World War II, had seen it all, had seen things that most of us couldn't even deal with. And he just didn't need any of that kind of personal kind of validation. He knew who he was and he was comfortable with who he was. And on the set, he was very confident. He didn't have to get angry. And obviously he had done Butch Cassidy with Redford and Newman. And so they respected him. They didn't, they didn't question George's. They would have disagreements now and then about how to play something. And Paul, the thing about Paul was such first of all, he was a tremendous person, one of the most generous and friendly and not star-like people ever. But he loved to experiment. So he would do a couple takes that were pretty much what the script called for. And then he would start to experiment a little bit. And it drove Redford crazy. And I think one of the reasons he did it was it drove Redford crazy. It drove George Hill crazy too, because George was thinking, how am I going to cut that? I mean, I've got Redford over here doing this, and I've got Newman over here doing, how am I going to cut these two things? Because Redford would come in, he was always very organized, incredibly professional, but he did the takes pretty much the same. He could improvise as long as he knew that, okay, we're going to improvise this take. But Newman didn't always announce that.
Sure.
He would just sort of go. And so there were times when Redford was like, what do you want me to say to that? What was that you just did?
And did the experimentation ever make it into the cut, or was it something that was kind of just like his?
Sometimes it did, but Newman was very smart about it. He knew that there was one in the can that was, how it was supposed to go. And unlike a lot of actors, Newman liked to do takes. A lot of actors really ornery after 5 or 6 takes. They just, especially stars, they feel like they're done. I did it. This is golden. You're not going to get any better out of me than this. So stop with this. Newman like that. He'd go 30 takes if you wanted to. But it was interesting to watch them work. And as a director, I just thought, okay, I learned a lot about actors. I learned a lot about directing. Everything I know basically about movies, I could basically trace back to George Hill.
The next thing I want to talk about is like the film's wrapped. You obviously have a great film, but I remember you telling me that like when it came out that it wasn't actually reviewed. I mean, it went on to win 7 Oscars. It was like a tremendous hit. But I remember you saying, and maybe this is my imagination, but it wasn't initially, it wasn't like Pauline Kael was falling all over it, or maybe I'm wrong. Like, what was the initial response to the film?
No, it was, the reviews weren't bad, but they were a little bit mixed. And Pauline Kael's review in particular was titled Con Job.
Oh,
now,
wow.
If you see that, this is not going to be good. And it wasn't. And we took a lot of heat for, well, first of all, it was like, oh, they're trying to cash in on the appeal of Butch Cassidy. That this is a money-making ploy to reunite Redford and Newman to cash in on their chemistry that made Butch Cassidy a big hit. And so a lot of people saw it as a cynical attempt by a studio to make a ton of money. Studios always try to make a ton of money. And I can't deny that obviously teaming Redford and Newman was not an idea that studios were going to go, oh, no, we can't do that. They were in Butch Cassidy.
It's already been done. Yeah, totally.
Don't even bring that in here. Get out of my office.
Yeah.
But I felt like, try to look at the movie as its own movie. And we also came out at the same time as The Exorcist. And The Exorcist was a huge deal. It was a huge cultural phenomenon. Nobody had seen a horror film that was that graphic and that, I think it was R-rated. I'm not sure. It may have been the first rated. But, her head spinning around and vomiting. There were lines around the block for that movie. And so people talked about The Exorcist in the press. The Sting did not get anywhere near we were kind of, ignored relative to The Exorcist. And we were both released toward the end of the year, qualified for Academy nominations. We were I think we may have been a Christmas release, or at least December. But the news was The Exorcist, and everybody was talking about The Exorcist. And I remember going to the well, you may get into this later, the Academy Awards, but
no, but tell the story. You're like in the flow, man.
Well, we're going to the Academy Awards, and Julia Phillips was we're in the limo, and I hate to speak ill of the dead, but she put this in her book anyway. she's got like 4 or 5 lines of cocaine,
those were the days.
In the limo, and I'm like, oh, great. The cops are going to pull us over. We're going to get arrested for cocaine possession on our way to the Academy.
Plus, Dad, you have terrible allergies. That's not going to work
exactly
for you.
What we need. This is exactly what we need.
Oh, God.
And she said, you know what? We're going to win tonight. And I said, what do you mean we're going to win tonight? She said, well, we're going to win. I just feel it. I said, well, all the publicity, all anybody talks about is The Exorcist. Why would we win? I mean, first of all, it's written by me, who nobody even knows, never heard of. And there's the kind of Redford and Newman backlash. And I said, and they're out grossing us like 80-1. And Julia said, no, they're not, David. I said, what do you mean? You don't know what the business thing is doing, do you? I said, no, I don't. Because I didn't.
You're not looking at grosses. There's no internet. Like someone has to tell you.
Back at that time, the grosses were not published in newspapers every week. There was no such thing. Today, it's
public record. Yeah,
all the internet. It's all over everything. Back then, they weren't posted. And what happened was, Exorcist had a huge couple opening weekends, and the Sting opened at $10 million, which back then was a good opening.
Yeah.
But it did 10 for 8 straight weeks.
Oh my gosh.
That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
That doesn't happen.
No drop off? Crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah. And I said, really? I said, yeah, we're probably going to pass them here pretty soon.
Wow.
And I thought, we are? Who? What's happening? Why? I didn't think anybody even knew about them.
Oh my God.
So that was the first that I knew of anything like that. And the Sting wound up doing, just in America, about 130 million.
Wow.
And adjusted gross today would be about 900 and something million worldwide.
Wow. Insane.
So anyway, we managed to get there without being arrested. So she says, we're going to win. And I'm saying, don't say that. No, don't say we're going to win, because I'm superstitious. I don't, first of all, I don't believe it. And second of all, you don't say those things out loud. That's like being arrogant.
Yeah.
So we go in, and they had a couple of awards before best screenplay, and I think editing and one other award were before that, maybe production design, and we won both of those. And I started to think, wow, maybe we got a shot here. And then I won. I was completely shocked, and I had not prepared anything to say.
Oh my God.
it never occurred to me that I would win. Even if some other things won, it never occurred to me that I would win, because who else is nominated in this category? Ingmar Bergman.
Oh God.
Okay, David Ward, nobody ever heard of, wrote one script. Ingmar Bergman in this category? No, except that back in those days, they didn't give it to foreign.
Right.
They didn't. It was always going to go to an American. I didn't really realize that, because, quite frankly, I didn't watch the Academy Awards that much ever before. I was a radical leftist film student who, most of my friends, when I decided to make, mainstream movies, thought I was a total sellout. Why do you want to do that? Why don't we make documentaries about the Black Panthers, and you want to go and do that? Anyway, I walk up on stage and I'm like, I can't see anything, because the lights are right in your face. I don't even quite know where the camera is. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to look straight ahead and hope that that's the camera and not a profile, because I don't know what I'm doing. So I start, and I think I wound up thanking the audience. And I generally thanked everybody, but I didn't mention any names.
Oh, God, Dad.
I didn't thank Redford, Newman, Hill.
No.
I didn't mention, I don't think I'd have to look at the tape again, but I don't think I mentioned any of them by name. I just wanted to get off the stage without.
Oh, my God, Dad. You were a baby. You were young. Yes.
And I walked off, and then I realized, shit, I don't think I thanked George Hill, Redford, and Newman. And I vowed to myself, if I was ever up on that stage again, that the first thing I would do is thank them back for the sting, and then thank whoever I was. And unfortunately, I've never been up there again. But God, I have, people say, do you have any regrets in your life? That's one of them.
Oh, Dad.
That Hill and Redford have both passed on, and I never got to thank them publicly.
Of course, Chicago was a rigged town. Fix was in. Dicks took their end without a beef. We had it down to a business. And it really stung, kid. No sense being a grifter if it's the same as being a citizen.
Este es el mejor momento de ahorrar en Verizon, porque puedes llevarte hasta 4 teléfonos nuevos ahora en nuestros planes más bajos. Es muy fácil. Imagínate todo lo que vas a poder hacer con un teléfono nuevo. Dile chao a las fotos borrosas. Vas a poder tomarte unas selfies increíbles y vas a poder hablar con tus primos sin que se muera la batería después de 5 minutos. Este es tu momento de ahorrar. Visita tu tienda Verizon y llévate hasta 4 teléfonos 5G. Sí, 4 teléfonos, ahora en nuestros planes más bajos. Al intercambiar teléfonos de Apple, Samsung o Google en cualquier condición. Solo en Verizon.
There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton bedding from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and breathable sheets. You'll experience pure comfort on night one and feel your bedding get softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com with code BUTTERY. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
The winner is David S. Ward for the Sting.
Thank you. There are a lot of people to thank for this. I think the Academy has thanked most of them for me with their nominations. So I would like to thank all the people who've gone to and supported the Sting, and all the people who support movies in general, because without them, none of us would be there. Thank you.
That was such the best. That I love that walk, like hearing your memories. What an incredible tale. The last question I want to ask you is, I hear filmmakers and actors all the time reference the Sting. Like I hear like Matt Damon talking about it and Affleck and all these guys. It's sort of
really?
like,
I never hear anybody talk about it.
It's like an iconic film for a lot of people of my generation and slightly older. And I guess, what would be your assessment on why it has sort of sustained the way it has? I mean, it is one of the all-time greats, I think.
No, it's funny because, I teach at the Chapman Film School 2 days a week. And almost most of my students who come in now have never seen this thing. They have seen Taxi Driver, because Taxi Driver, we live in a world now that it's a more cynical world than that one was. It feels like a world that's more dangerous. It's more polarized. It's just more, it's a nastier world. People are not getting along as well. Discontent is much more easily expressed. And I think that the Sting brings a certain kind of entertainment that only movies can sort of bring. It does sort of take you to another time, another world. it is about thieves, although they don't steal. It's not about it. They are not really good citizens, as it were. But the way it unfolds and the way it ends, I think, gives people a certain sense of satisfaction with the movie experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sometimes missing for people today. I think young people tend to like the hard-edged movies. They like movies that don't end happily. They like movies that sometimes end without real resolution. They like characters who are very flawed and don't necessarily come to any, they don't necessarily change for the better because they feel like that's more realistic. And I understand it, but I think that The Sting just sort of it has a happy ending, but it doesn't seem like it does until it does. And so I think it keeps people off balance. And in that sense, it's entertaining for them to find out that they were wrong about certain things. And obviously, it's also two movie stars who were real movie stars, who embraced the idea of being a movie star. Most actors today don't want to be movie stars. They don't want what comes with it because obviously a lot more comes with it today than used to come with it.
Well, Dad, I love you so much. Thank you for doing this. It's going to be another big hit.
I love you too, Guy. I'm just so happy to do another podcast.
No, it's so good to catch up. Well, I'll just have to keep the next one will be King Ralph. I'm just going to keep bothering you every 3 months with a great story.
Oh yeah, King Ralph. I'm trying to. We'll have a conversation some other time about which might have the best stories.
Vanessa, that was so much fun.
He's so good. Such a good storyteller.
I would sit at his left hand side at the dinner table growing up for the 10 years that he and my mother were married. And he would just come to the table and he would tell stories, or he would play music from his latest movies. And I really felt a part of the filmmaking process because he is such a good storyteller. And it was part of the reason that I wanted to get into films. So this was just another version of that. I loved the story of him meeting Redford. And then it just all happened in 2 weeks, which is so the way Hollywood works. It's either you're waiting, or stuff happens immediately. And it's the most frustrating thing about the business, but also the most exciting part.
And it's interesting to hear when someone at 26 was able to accomplish something at this magnitude, because I look at my life right now and I'm I don't think I've done anything at that scale. But I mean, it's just so impressive that at that time, especially getting those actors like Robert Redford, they weren't doing 1,000 movies, They weren't attaching to everything.
That's right.
So it's incredibly impressive what he was able to accomplish, especially in that time where it was so competitive. It was so much harder. Not to say it's not hard to make movies now, but I think at that time it was so much more rare to get a movie off the ground.
Well, you're so right. There just wasn't the internet, so you couldn't submit just an offer to an agent, via email. You had to call people and talk them through it. And then those people wouldn't take your calls unless they knew someone who knew someone. And which is such the tale of this movie getting made. It's it's all coincidence. It's all, my dad getting into a fender bender, or talking to the guy on the corner who's, runs a typing school or whatever it is. And that was the way things got made back in the day. And now we can get the email of a CAA agent off the internet and just send an offer, and they're fielding hundreds upon hundreds of offers for Denis Villeneuve or whoever it is,
It makes it
Brad
so much
Pitt,
easier.
Whoever. And so there is not as much care. And I just love hearing about the good old days.
Yeah.
I love this era.
Awesome. No, you had to physically, I say this because you were still producing in this era, but you physically had to deliver scripts to people, which to me is wild, but I know that was obviously still happening even a couple of years ago.
But growing up, my dad would get a manila envelope of 3 or 4 scripts every Friday. And they would be hand delivered from CAA, and they would have these like big red CAA covers on them with brads, and they would just get a doorbell and they would be left at the door. And it was like, sometimes he read them, sometimes he didn't. And they would pile up because that was just what would happen. And those were the good old days. You could tell when your family was doing well when they would get a lot of submissions, And then there were days where periods when things would dry up and you would not be getting as many submissions because people weren't pursuing you as heavily. And so it was very feast or famine in my household. But I love that story so much.
That's so
great.
Cool. I wish someone would deliver me scripts on a Friday night.
Well, I still love to. I make Brianna print out scripts because it's still very hard for me to just read on my phone or read on the computer and find, and take notes and all that stuff. I still like doing hand notes. So it's still a tradition. We have to talk about just briefly the fact that we went to the Gotham Awards last night.
Yes,
that was what a dazzling affair that was.
What a night.
Oh my God.
Night.
Our dear, dear friend Dan Crown hosts a table every year. He invites us. It is the most fun night in New York. It is like the Independent Spirit Awards East.
Yeah.
And it's the first awards event of the season. And so it sort of kicks off the fanfare of award season. And we kind of go every year because it's a little bit of a back to school night for independent producers and filmmakers. And you see people you haven't seen in months or a year. And it's at Cipriani downtown. And you've got to have a Bellini, and you've got to have the beef tenderloin or whatever they're serving.
The same cheese dish every year.
Oh my God.
Melted cheese on a plate.
But it was amazing.
It was awesome.
Zendaya, Timmy Chalamet, Josh O'Connor, Angelina Jolie.
You're almost not starstruck because there are so many people around that you're just oh, I'm so sorry, Nicole Kidman. I'm so sorry, Denise Villeneuve.
Literally, I got sandwiched between Nicole Kidman and Zendaya, and I was like, I'm in the wrong place.
I need to
and it was a total traffic jam, but it was so great because then you always do know a couple people. I know James Mangold's agent, Phil Raskin, who I hadn't seen in forever, and he looked great, and we got to catch up for a minute. And it's kind of like that. You see so many people in a moment.
Yeah.
And you went to the after party, which I fully expected. I went home early. You had the full night.
I was I'm so tired. I flew in from LA.
You say this every year, by the way. You're like, I wasn't going. And then my friend pulled me into a car and I ended up.
It's actually true. That's what happened. I ended up at 9 Orchard last night with some friends, and it was a whole affair. Everyone came out. I was just telling you earlier that Molly Ringwald was behind me, and I was like, oh my God, an icon. There were just people kind of showing up that were unbelievable that you almost felt like, should I be here? Should I be watching this? Getting in an elevator and it's, Aubrey Plaza and Kieran Culkin. And I'm like, oh my God, I shouldn't be listening into this, but it's very cool. I feel like I want to kind of hold on to this for my entire career where I still get really excited and nerdy about it. Something about the Gothams that I really loved is that everyone is such a film lover because it is an independent kind of spirit. I love that I still get really nerdy and geeky about seeing celebrities, and not everyone makes me starstruck, but I'm still like, whoa, 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 they were in that. I still get that, and I want to hold on to it and not feel too cool to be in that room.
I did have a very, for me, story of my life, not story of his, great interaction with Josh O'Connor.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So we were
Which is huge for us.
Because, I mean, if he only knew how much we obsess about him.
Yeah.
But we were crossing each other's paths and there was not enough room for both of us. So I gestured for him to go. And then he was like, oh, no, you go. And then some woman cut in front of both of us, just took the opportunity because neither of us were moving. We were being too polite to each other. And then we met eyes and we are now friends in my mind.
You're we're best friends. You and I are best friends.
Okay. So that was a great one. Such a fun night. Dan Crown is the best.
The best.
The Crown Table was the best.
It was
Yoni
so much
is so fun. Chris Lager, all of them.
Big shout outs.
And let's do the wrap up. That was a fun one.
All right, guys. Follow us on Instagram at Hollywood Gold Pod. Go on our website, staygoldfeatures.com. We have a merch tab with really great sweatshirts. The holidays are coming up. If you forgot to get yourself something, get yourself something now or get something for your friends. Cozy on up by the fire to a Hollywood Gold sweatshirt.
Who doesn't want one?
Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on Pocket Casts.
By the way, 7 people told me that they listen to our podcast in that room.
I heard that too.
People are like, oh, we listen. We listen.
Who was it?
Eric Darbeloff, like the head of Roadside Attractions.
From the podcast.
Yeah, you're like gaining some notoriety as well. And then like a UTA agent was like, oh, Daniela, I listen every week. And I was like, I don't even know who you are barely. This is amazing.
This is awesome. It's awesome, but also really embarrassing.
Well, it's like not just friends. It's really not just friends anymore.
I mean, the interviews are good.
Yeah.
The sweatshirts are good. The interviews are good.
It's great. It's all great. Stay gold, guys.
Stay gold.